Welcome to a very special episode of the Mike Sennello Show here on Easter Sunday, 2022. Very special for that reason, but also because for the first time ever, we are going to be having a pre-recorded episode of the Mike Sennello Show. We are not live for the first time ever, and that's because it's Easter Sunday, and I'm going to spend the afternoon and evening with my family. Deal with it. So that means there's also going to be no Q&A, live Q&A like we normally do. So again, it's Easter Sunday. I want to spend time with my family. Deal with it. That said, we do have a lot to go over today, and the theme for tonight's show is going to be apropos for the holiday introspection. It's going to be understanding your place, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, understanding your mistakes, and being able to self-reflect on your position in life and to be able to build from that. And in the past week, man, we haven't had better examples of places for introspection and how poorly certain people have actually exhibited that introspection, which is obviously necessary. And again, there's a lot to go over here today. But before we get into this past week's events, one of the things that have been doing is passing around this petition, and it's on change.org. I'll put a link in this video's description so you guys can jump on. Thank you guys so much to the people who have signed on. We're going to be talking about this in much greater detail today. It's a topic we have absolutely beaten to death, but the short version is that this project is absolutely a boondoggle, and we'll come back to that word, is absolutely becoming a boondoggle and quickly becoming a boondoggle. And what the town council needs from you, what the town needs from you is a demand that they give the DPW director, Jack Healy, instructions. And those instructions are going to be to build the damn bridge, as the title says. In short, and I do have a paper petition, because we've read this before, and the short version is that the town, this 19-foot bridge in Upper Mariel, in a pretty rural section of town, 19-foot long bridge, is set to not even break ground until next year, and it's going to wind up costing, if we're not kidding ourselves, if we're not being deliberately obtuse about the thing, it's going to wind up costing you, the taxpayer, $2 million or more of your money. In all likelihood, that's what's going to happen. We're already set to spend almost $1.7 million in gross on the thing, and again, we're not set to break ground on this thing until next year. And this is a project that already has taken 5 years to get to this point. And the point that we're at right now, so folks know, is the last possible minute for Jack Healy to get in certain grant applications, which are due on the 30th, that would wind up saving the taxpayer here in New Milford at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's through state grants that are willing, because the state is willing to cover half of the cost of this bridge. So if you are not in favor of spending infinity dollars on a 19-foot long bridge because 5 or 6 people have interfered into the pedantic minutia of what goes on day to day over at DPW, then please do sign on to this petition. Again, link is in this video's description. We've read this thing out loud before. I do have a paper version. Happy to go over everything with everybody. So reach out to me, private message me, direct message me, put in the comment section of this video, hey Mike, I'm on board. Come chat with me. I'll be happy to drive the paper version of this petition to everybody. In the meantime, on anonymous signing of the online version of this petition, which you guys can see here, is available. Thanks to the people who have signed on. 500 people, almost 500 people have seen the petition, which means we can definitely get more signatures on the online version of the petition. However, like I mentioned, the paper version of the petition is going to have a lot more of an impact on the 6 reasonable town councilmen who will absolutely listen to what this petition has to say, which, in short, I do have a 1-sentence summary. Petition to demand the New Milford Town Council and Department of Public Works rebuild the Cherniske Road Bridge without wasting any more of our money and time. And my God, has there been an awful lot of wasting of money and time, which is a theme that's going to show up again at the end of this video. But the short version is that the reason this whole thing is taking so long and it's going to wind up costing so much money is because of, like I said, interference by 5 or 6 squeakiest wheels, if you will, into the pedantic minutia, non-stop interference into the pedantic minutia of the specifics of the architectural and engineering design of this bridge. I should not know what a box culvert is. And if you don't, let me know. I'll be happy to talk about it sometime. There's no reason for this. Absolutely no reason for this. It is not an appeal to authority to say that the town council's job as the legislative body is to allow the engineers in the room to conduct the engineering. And if we don't have trust and faith in the people we hired to do their damn jobs, then the appropriate thing to do is to terminate them. So either the town council has faith in Jack Healy and should just let him do his damn job, or they don't, in which case they should fire him. And so far, from all indications, there's no reason to do that. There's absolutely no reason to not trust Jack Healy, who has been the second DPW director over the course of this project and has bent over backwards to completely scrap the entire project design 3 times, as we are now on our 4th design phase, to bend over backwards and cater to the whim of these 5 or 6 people whose goalposts on this matter are constantly moving. And we're going to talk about that, believe me. But before we do have to get over, there was a lot of stuff that happened over the course of last week, so we're going to start with some of the easier stuff that we can get through. One of those things is actually going to be a perfect place for me to exhibit what I mean by know your place when it comes to me. And that is that last week on Monday night, we had the ARPA funds passed at the town meeting. So all of the American Rescue Plan Act funds that had been voted on and approved for to pass on to you, the voter, to you, the electorate, from town council and from the Board of Finance, was passed on to that town meeting that you all could have participated in. And there were about 80 or so people in the room. So there was a lot of people there. And all of these funds passed. Now, again, this is the 3rd tranche. I have them on display right now. You can see them. The link to all of this is at the top of your screen. I'll put a link in this video's description to where you can see that agenda and you can see what passed as far as this 3rd tranche is concerned. And all of these funds have now been approved finally. So this is the final step in the process for the approval of these funds, which again, don't just come from the town council. They come from you, the voter, right? And again, speaking in my opinion on these sort of things, to know my place, number one, I've never really spoken at town council about these things. And it's not just a matter of technical feasibility with what I do at town council when it comes to live broadcast of these meetings, and it being difficult to do that and also go to the podium in an organized and neat manner. It's really, really, really hard for me to do that, but that's not the argument I'm making. I know that when I first proposed what ought to be done with these funds, I know that the libertarian take on this thing that I proposed was super fringe minority. And that I knew, too, that the town council and that a lot of these governing bodies and a lot of members of the governing bodies still live by the policy of the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. And that is a wildly inappropriate thing to do in a representative system of government. 5 people in the room saying one thing and there not being another person in the room to say the opposite, that is not how business should be conducted. The members of town council were elected to these positions. Now, in fairness, 3 of them were winners by default elected to those positions and lost in colossal landslides, which is a point we're going to come back to later in the show. Again, knowing your place. But for me to have gone to the podium and said, the only thing that I'm even might consider supporting, the only thing I might even consider voting in favor of as being, and we've talked about this on the show a lot, as being let me find the exact dollar amount. The deferral, here it is, item number 7, New Milford sewer abatement, $136,000. This is effectively a 2-year moratorium on connection fees to the New Milford sewer plant. And I explained in the last episode why I could build a case to be in favor of that sort of thing when it comes to this sort of expenditure. And quite frankly, again, I would have voted against every single one of these line items if I was on town council, except maybe that one. Maybe that one. And I've told you why that's the case. But the reason I haven't gone to the podium and said, I want you guys to vote no, because I know that the arguments I make are really, really fringe in this case. I know that they were incredibly unpopular. I know that you guys are coming around to them now, and that I was right. And hey, there were a lot of people that said I was a kook and a crank at the beginning. But I think you guys are kind of coming on board with what I was saying about how this is money that was stolen from you in the first place and should be just given back to you. And the best way to do that under the law, which is still legal, seemed to have been at the time to me to just establish a nonprofit homeschool vouchering program, right? And just have the nonprofit association dole out vouchers for homeschooling. And I gave the rationale about why that was in some way related to COVID-19. I gave that rationale. That rationale is significantly more consistent with the idea of tying things to COVID-19 than a lot of these other expenditures that were ostensibly tied to COVID-19 in certain places. But at the same time, I knew my place. I knew that the arguments that I made are arguments I can make here on my show, but that when I go to the formal setting of town council, which is a formal setting, I can get away with F-bombs by accident on this show. I can't get away with F-bombs by accident at town council. That's inappropriate. That's truly inappropriate. But I also know that me going to that podium and saying that thing, there are people in the room that will say, oh, well, 3 people say one thing, 2 people say the other thing. That's not how this works. Thousands and thousands and thousands of New Milford voters in November of 2021, cast their vote. And that vote was largely on the faith that the voters had in the people that are getting elected to these positions, especially town council, to conduct that business. In the case of the town council, the thing that people are voting on, whether they realize it or not, is their faith in the councilmen and their abilities to exhibit quality value judgment. Because a lot of these issues, a lot of these topics are things you don't know that you're going to run into when you're getting elected. The people that are casting votes in November of 2021 aren't casting a vote on something like the border wall, aren't casting a vote on things like international immigration, things that are going to continue to be a topic of discussion for decades and decades and decades. Really, the only major topic of discussion you're going into when you're casting your vote in November of every odd year is the budget. That's just about it. And we're going to come back to that. Believe me, that we're going to come back to the budget in just a quick second. But the point is that when I was making these arguments on this show, I knew that there were people in the room that weren't going to do the appropriate thing, which is to say, here's what the scoreboard of voters showed when it was thousands of voters, when everyone had the opportunity to go to the poll and cast a vote. Here's what they said. And in short, and we're going to bring this number back up, in short, they said 73-27. In short, they said Wilt Chamberlain versus a bunch of middle schoolers, right? In short, it was a slam dunk one way and not the other. It was an absolute indictment on one of those two parties. In a town where there are more Democrats than there are Republicans, in a town where there are more registered Democrats than Republicans, no Republican mayoral candidate should win 73-27, unless that isn't an indictment on the DTC leadership cast by the Democrats of this town, which I've said it 1,000 times. 1,000 times. There are Democrats in this town I would vote for today, right? And I don't think that the majority of Democrats in this town are the people that I'm going to put into this category of the radicals within the DCC leadership ranks, and that it's, again, 5 or 6 people that even Democrats in this town have a problem with. So that was me exhibiting knowing my place, exhibiting knowing that the squeakiest wheel shouldn't get the grease. And I did that same thing too last week when the Board of Finance held its public hearing, which was Thursday night, on the town budget. So I gave some broad ideas on how people should view spending in this town. But when I was asked by the chair if I would like to comment on the budget itself, again, we're so far along in the budget process. The things that I would like to see be changed at this point, unless there's a great groundswell, we're so late in the process, we should know our position. And even the libertarians in the room who are on board with me and who say things like, really, this this $60-something million that's going to the Board of Education, for example, should be in the low 50s. The pathway to getting there isn't there. We've already eclipsed that pathway. The pathway to getting there means a fundamental change in how both sides of the budget are looked at, and a fundamental change in how, in the case of public education, how we look at things like measured outcomes, how we look at the fact that we would look at measured outcomes or measurable outcomes, something that starts in December of, let's say, this year for the next year's budget, not in almost May, right? At this point, I'd be too late in the process to really give the thoughts that I have on the matter when it comes to the changes I would make. And at this point, since I was the only person in the room, other than our good mayor, it was me doing the filming and our mayor paying attention because he's a good mayor and that's where he ought to be, right? And that's where we would expect that. So not only was there a public hearing, there was, after the public hearing closed, where the chair was, Walter O'Connor, was kind enough to offer a lot of leeway, let's call it, a lot of discretion in how he conducted public comment. Thursday night was the actual deliberations. And the very short of it is that the Board of Finance passed both sides of the budget, the municipal and Board of Ed side of the budget, without any amendments. So passed without amendment. Took about 10 minutes, and you can see both of those meetings are here on the Town of New Milford's YouTube channel. You can go there and you can see 10 minutes for the New Milford Board of Finance special meeting for budget deliberations, 36 minutes for the New Milford Board of Finance annual budget public hearing. This is all in a playlist called the 2022 budget hearings. You can all find all of these. They're all in chronological order, starting with the February 15th presentation by the mayor, and then continuing on to the 14th. I'm probably going to retitle this playlist just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to find. But there it is. That's where it's all publicly available. And again, at both of those meetings last week, it was me and the mayor, and that was it. So, that was your guys' opportunity, and it's now gone and passed. And the thing that's going to take place tomorrow night is a special meeting of the town council to set some dates. For example, they're going to be setting the obligatory annual meeting for the town, and they're also going to be setting the date of the referendum. That's all they're going to be doing. That's all they're going to be doing tomorrow night. The whole meeting will probably take about 5 to 10 minutes. It may not. It may not, and we'll come back to why that is, and I think you guys already know why that is. But this is a meeting that should take no more than 8 minutes to get through. And again, we're going to come back to that idea in just a moment. But the point is, one of the things I did interject in knowing my place is, and I hope people will agree with me, that there was nobody in the room for the public hearing. This was a non-contentious budget season. There's no reason that the chairman of the Board of Finance can't, so the charter requires the separation of the public hearing and the deliberations for the Board of Finance. So they have to be on 2 different nights. And the charter also requires that the town council be the body that sets the date for the referendum. So to me, that seems kind of ridiculous that we're going to have all of these volunteers be brought together for yet another night to, for all of this, with all this commotion, to spend 10 minutes in the room setting a date. So I think a lot of these clerical things can be combined. And to me, this seems like an opportunity for charter revision. Now, right now, the Board of Finance chair, Walter O'Connor, can't use his discretion to say, you know what, we're going to have the public hearing at 6 p.m., and then at 7 p.m., we're going to have our deliberations. Deal with it on the same night. And at the end of our deliberations, the final agenda item on the deliberations is going to be to set the date for the referendum. And then we get all done in one night. And it's not just me as a contractor saying, it seems ridiculous that I have to go up there and set up 3 different nights in a row for 10-minute meetings. Right? It's not just me saying that, though it's kind of true that that's the case. But again, knowing my place, the argument I would make is that the voters can't attend 3 nights in a row worth of meetings, but they may be able to say, you know what, if there's only one night where all this is going to happen, I'll make a point to make it to this meeting. I'll move some things around my schedule. I could force my way into one meeting, right? And again, the Board of Finance members are all volunteers. The town council members are all volunteers. There's no reason for them to have to then look at their schedule on Monday and say at the last minute, oh my God, now I've got to block off however much time so that I can go to town hall, sit there for 10 minutes and go over dates and then leave. It seems like an undue burden to the volunteers who serve on these boards and commissions. Seems like an opportunity to me for a charter revision, which we can hold a charter revision commission as often as we want. And the charter revision commission at the end of it can say, you know what, we don't recommend any changes. But to me, that seems like an opportunity for a revision. Just like I said with the ARPA funds, the fact that the Board of Finance somehow has no legal authority or oversight over the expenditure of what's going to amount to over $7.9 million in ARPA funding, to me seems kind of ridiculous. So that another place where there's an opportunity for charter revision. So Pete, if you wind up seeing this video, man, I would love to see over the course of the next few months, let's do another charter revision commission and see if they would actually make some recommendations for things like these two subjects. So that's what took place during last week. Outside of the town council meeting, there was the public hearing before the town council meeting. It wasn't a public hearing. It was a town meeting before the town council meeting on Monday. Thursday night was the Board of Finance public hearing for the budget. Wednesday night was the public hearing for their budget. Thursday night was the Board of Finance's deliberations. Monday night will be the night where will be a special meeting of the town council to establish dates, and then the referendum will probably be in May. And then the meeting began. And what a meeting it was. And again, another perfect example of knowing your place. Another perfect example of introspection. The first topic we're going to talk about is actually just the easier topics to get through, and that's why we're going to start there before we get into the nightmare, the mess that was what followed that. So the very short, because this is what you guys care about the most, the very short version of this is that the town council voted to not paint lines on Long Mountain Road. Now, I gave you my thoughts on this matter. Chris Cosgrove was the only dissenting vote. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. Esposito was not in attendance, and neither was Sal Rankowitz, so it was 5 to 1 in favor of Katie Francis's motion to not paint those lines on Long Mountain Road. Again, I've given you my thoughts on the matter, right? It seems to me like the safety concern is at best you're splitting a hair to say that it's safer to paint the lines on that road than it would be to not paint the lines. But we do know that it's going to cost money. We do know it's going to cost money. We do know it's going to take time. We do know we're going to have to buy paint. We do know we're going to have to pay operators to go out there and spray the paint. And again, this isn't the town's money. This isn't the town council's money. This isn't the Board of Finance's money. This isn't DPW's money. This is your money. This is my money, right? So like I've said before, especially because this is taken not in a voluntary exchange like you would at Taylor's, at the local hardware store, because this is taken with, at the very least, the threat of violence, this money needs to be handled extremely delicately. Extremely delicately. And when you're running into a situation where the safety concern, as far as painting the line is concerned, is a splitting of hairs at best in favor of painting the lines, to me, screw it. Screw it. The road's already there. The road's already there. People are already driving down that road, have already been driving down that road for almost a year now. Screw it. Don't paint the lines. Now, there was a legal concern. Because Randy DeBella did mention that there was a legal concern as to the liability that the town would expose themselves to in superseding the traffic authority's ruling to paint the lines. Now, of course, if they're going to paint the lines, they have to put it double down. So it's either 2 lines or no lines, right? And again, if this all seems like, town politics, again, if this all seems like, why are we talking about painting lines on a road? I'm on board. We'll come back to that. But this is all setting things up. So folks know, so folks understand better. This was, Town Attorney Randy DeBella was not there on Monday night. So in his stead was John Tower, who was representing the firm of Kramer and Anderson, who represent the town as their official attorneys. Randy DeBella is simply the human being that acts as the face of the contractor, who is the town attorney, who is in this case Kramer and Anderson. He wasn't available to be there. Because guess what? Some people have lives. So John Tower was filling in his stead, and the mayor was kind enough to get a written statement from Randy DeBella opining on the liability concern when it came to the painting or non-painting of those lines. It seems to me, if I may characterize the thing before you hear it, which is probably unfair, it seems to me like the attorneys believe that it is a really, really, really dubious concern of liability in this case, though it may not be zero. So this is the mayor reading attorney. This is the mayor and town attorney, John Tower, speaking on the matter.
So there was some conjecture, both in public participation, about our town attorney, Randy DeBella, not being here. So I'd asked Randy, because he's not going to be here, could he write a letter? Which he did. Okay? So Attorney Tower, who's representing us, thank you, John. Could you speak a little bit about the letter?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Just quickly, this letter prepared by Randy after a careful review of the scenic road ordinance provides simply that the traffic authority does not have exclusive authority or jurisdiction over this issue, and that the town council retains the ability by motion to basically adopt a policy to not stripe this road. And that's because the traffic authority under its ordinance is not given exclusive authority in this particular area. And as to liability concerns, I'm not going to repeat the analysis here, but Randy DeBella basically points out that we reserve the ability to protect the town with governmental immunity. I don't need to get into that. That's a complex area, but we don't think we have any erosion of our liability defenses if we do not stripe the road.
So in very, very short, the town attorneys don't believe that there's any serious concern for liability there. And again, Andrew, who has been presenting in public comment on the thing, and first things first, folks, if you ever wanted to see how process works correctly, you do things the way Andrew did. You present the actual data and let the town council make their decision. Right? Andrew did a great job of saying, here's what the research says in my favor. And then he would go to the town council members and hand them packets. And he would read, a prepared speech, right? So that he knows he can stay under 5 minutes, and went through the proper authorities. He went to the traffic authority. He went to all of these other meetings that are outside of the town council. Now, I also mentioned too that when it came to the Cherniske Road Bridge project, we didn't hear a peep from anyone until the town council a few years ago was set to make a decision on this matter. And then all of a sudden things came out. And then all of a sudden the folks came out of the woodworks. So just so folks understand too what John Tower was saying, and I'll present the legalese. I don't know that I'm going to have time to really get into the legalese as to what he meant by qualified immunity, what he meant by the general immunity. But this is what John Tower, this is the short version of that legalese to explain what he means by that.
The point is, it's a discretionary function. Yeah. And when you fall into that category, you preserve your governmental immunity defenses.
Got it. Okay.
Discretionary acts are inherently those that are defendable under governmental immunity.
So what's happening here is the town council is going to supersede a decision by the traffic authority. But because this is a discretionary decision, and this isn't a statutory decision, they're using their discretion as councilmen who were elected on that value judgment we talked about to say, you know what, the safety concern here is at best the splitting of a hair. Mike Nahum talked about that at the meeting. So since we know for sure we're going to have to spend a good amount of money, let's not spend the money. Let's save the taxpayers some dollars, and let's move on. Now, Chris Cosgrove was the one dissenting vote. In very short, his objections are basically just something along the lines of, although the concern for liability might actually be dubious and might be extremely limited, it's non-zero, and that his standard for that liability concern is zero. I don't think that's an appropriate threshold, considering there's no such thing as zero risk, and this is basically nothing more than a risk calculation. But that's how Chris Cosgrove voted in the moment on that. Again, he was still at least citing basically his role as a councilman in eliciting a value judgment. Some of you are going to agree with him. Some of you are going to disagree with him. Some of you are going to say the safety concern is significantly in favor of one thing and not in favor of the other. Now, there was also talk in public comment about research that shows that it was more safe, or research that suggests that the previous research on it being less safe to not paint the lines was bunk, which was great because now we have research from both sides. But again, to me, from what I've read of the research, to be really short, because I don't want this thing to run 2 hours long, right? If you guys want me to go over the research, we can go over the research. But to me, the research doesn't seem to be significantly and heavily in favor of one or the other. It seems to me to be a splitting of the hairs. So I know for a fact it's going to cost us a bunch of money. I don't know for a fact if it's going to be safer to paint the lines than to not paint the lines, or vice versa. But I know for a fact it's going to cost us money. And at this point, DPW needs to have a decision made. And here is and that was town council instructing them to to basically instruct, Katie's motion was to instruct the town council, to instruct the DPW not to paint the lines, in short. And that's what was decided upon. And in this case, I think the process actually worked correctly. I think that there was time for introspection and people did that. I think that the town council, in voting the way that they did, in basically in line with what John Tower said, was them knowing their place, was them not saying, I know better than the attorneys what that risk calculation is or what that liability risk is. That's John Tower. That's them. Even in the case of Chris Cosgrove, that's Chris Cosgrove relying on John Tower and Attorney DeBella's assessment of the liability risk. And, Chris Cosgrove saying, well, they have admitted it's non-zero, therefore, right? That's not Chris Cosgrove saying the risk is greater than what they're implying. That's Chris Cosgrove saying, I'm going based off of the risk that they are implying, and we're making a decision based on what these attorneys say. Now, if you can no longer trust the town attorneys, if you can no longer trust our representation over at Kramer and Anderson to do their jobs and to make these risk calculations, number one, present information, evidence your claim. And number two, then the only job of the legislative arm of our governing body is to terminate that contract, to no longer have them represent that interest, to no longer be the experts we rely on in the room, just like with DPW, which we will get to in a moment. But the point is, again, and Katie Francis explained this at the end of the meeting, Andrew wasn't saying he knows better than DPW. What Andrew was doing was saying, here's some research that says don't paint the lines for this exact case, and I'm going to rely on this research. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. That's a perfectly reasonable thing as a town councilman to say, well, I mean, the research is here, and I'm literate, therefore I can read the research, and the research seems to say X, Y, Z. Just like the town attorney's opinion says X, Y, Z. And if the town attorney's opinion had said, whoa, hold on, time out, slow your roll. If you supersede the traffic authority, there's a major risk of liability concern here, right? If they said that we're definitely going to lose our asses when we get sued because it's going to happen because somebody got into an accident, then I think that this entire calculus completely changes. I don't think that Chris Cosgrove would have been lone wolfing that night. I think there would have been a lot of votes the other way. But again, they know their place. Everybody in the room knows their place. Andrew knows he's not an expert on this thing. So he relies on the data and research that's been conducted by those experts. And again, this isn't an appeal to authority. This is an appeal to process because you don't have infinite time and infinite resources. Scarcity exists, folks. For those in the room that don't understand basic economics, scarcity exists. So when it comes to legislative action within town government, there is a time and a place to say either we trust this guy or we don't. And if we don't trust this guy, why is he working for us? And that quite naturally segues to the entire conversation around the Cherniske Road Bridge project, which, again, have the handwritten petition. Folks, if you're on board with me, please do reach out to me. Please do reach out to me. I'll be happy to drive to your door and get your signature onto the paper version of this. And again, link is in this video's description to the online version of this petition. If you don't feel comfortable putting your name to something, there is a way to sign the online version of the petition anonymously. And please share that link with everybody. 500 people have seen it. There's no way that we can't get 100 signatures by Monday of next week. And by the way, I say Monday of next week because Monday of next week is going to be our next town council meeting. And that's going to be the 25th. Jack Healy, the grants applications are for that, what's going to work out to hundreds of thousands of dollars in effect from the state for this project, are due on the 30th. The 30th is a Saturday. The state's not going to be looking over grant applications and taking them in on Saturday, right? So they're really due Friday. And from what Jack Healy said, they're basically filled out, ready to go. They're just missing a few blanks that are going to be dependent upon how the town council decides at the next town council meeting. If the item is not on the agenda, I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak and I'm going to say that you guys need to use your powers as members of town council to amend the meeting agenda to include this item because it needs to get done. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars of your taxpayer money that we're going to lose out on if we don't get these grant applications in time. And Jack Healy's going to have literally 3 days to get it done. 3 days to get it turned around because a town council meeting is going to happen at 7 p.m. on Monday night, the 25th. Jack Healy's not going to be doing work during the day on the 25th. There's not going to be anyone in the state offices to take it in at 7 p.m. on the 25th. So he's going to have the 26th, the 27th, and probably only the 28th to get it all in, right? Because it has to be checked in, which means he's probably going to have to get it in time. He's probably going to have to make a drive out to Hartford to get this to happen. He's probably going to have to get into his car and make a 3-hour round trip at least to Hartford to get this in time, to make sure the grants get in on time, or pay one of his interns basically to go make that same drive. Somebody's going to probably have to drive out to Hartford for all of this. And for all of this is for a 19-foot long bridge, which we have absolutely beaten to death. I've talked about how the goalposts have constantly been moving from these 5 or 6 people, constantly been moving. We went from it should be one lane. Again, Cherniske Road is a multi-mile long road who for the entirety of its miles of length is 2 lanes except for 19 feet where there's a 1-lane bridge. We talked about how the goalposts have moved from a safety concern because it's safer to have a 1-lane bridge because people are slowing down, which is idiotic because the reason they're slowing down is because it's not as safe as a 2-lane bridge. You don't solve a problem of safety with danger. The goalpost moved then to, it's a bucolic, you'll disturb the environment. No. Jack Healy put these to bed. We've got the environmental studies that are ready to go. And it's not that no matter what the environmental studies find, it's not going to affect the design of the bridge. We talked about double box culvert, single box culvert with an open base. Now we're talking about poured in place forms. No, we're done. We're done with all this. And again, I'm done with the goalposts constantly moving. And again, there were people at public comment that made just outright false claims, but I don't have infinite time to be spending on this. So we're going to skip them and go straight to Adriana Ricchio's public comments, which started with the moving of a goalpost now to the temporary bridge that we're going to have to install because these 5 or 6 people keep constantly hanging up this process. And now we're going to have to work on. So I explained last week that the bridge at Indian Trail is closed. The bridge over on Tamarack is closed. The bridge on Cherniske Road is closed. These are all Mary-all bridges. And that now, because of the infrastructure surrounding this, because this project has taken so long, we're going to have to start replacing the bridges on the detours. Right now, I talked to Mike Boucher, so I have to make a correction to last week. In all likelihood, all that DPW is going to do is an inspection of the Indian Trail Bridge and some minor work around the road, and that's it. It's probably not going to remain closed for very long if it's still closed today, Easter Sunday. It's probably not going to get any actual work done to the bridge. It's probably fine. It will probably pass its inspection and we can move on. But with that said, what are we doing in terms of establishing a precedent when it comes to the interference with the pedantic minutia of the day-to-day engineering and architectural work that happens over at DPW when it comes to the replacement of these 60 some odd bridges in town? Are we going to keep doing this? Are we going to do this for these bridges along West Aspetuck that are along the Cherniske Road detour? Are we going to keep doing this? Is this going to just continuously cost us millions and millions and millions of dollars for every single culvert and bridge we have to replace in town? And take half a decade every time we do it? Or are we going to tell these people, no, enough is enough. Jack Healy, your job is to build a bridge. Build a bridge. Right? And this is no dig on Jack Healy. He's been a saint in this process. And I've said on this show that if I was in his shoes, I would have been fired a year ago. I would have been fired a year ago because I would have been so fed up with all this. Right? But again, we're going to go straight to Adriana Ricchio's comments because we're now talking about a temporary bridge. And the only reason we're doing this temporary bridge is so that we have at least some way to get our police and fire across the West Aspetuck in these parts of Marial, in these parts of Upper Marial, basically Kenton, Washington, where it's going to be virtually impossible to provide adequate service in those areas without at least some way to get across this bridge. So now we're going to have a temporary bridge. And that temporary bridge is going to cost us like $200 and something thousand at least to buy and to cover this temporary service. Now we're going to be able to use it in other places. So maybe in the long run, we wind up saving money. But this is money we didn't have to spend. This bridge could have been built 2 years ago for a few $100,000. Now we're going to wind up spending millions. But go ahead and continue to move the goalpost, Adriana.
So the second thing I'd like to talk about is the proposed temporary Acro Bridge for Cherniske Road Bridge. And on paper, it seems like this might be a great idea. It could save the town money. I just hope it wouldn't be something that stays there if it's only meant for 2 years, because
It's temporary.
we'd be kicking the can down the road again.
What an unbelievable failure to adhere to the principle of charity. What an unbelievably uncharitable take on that matter. It's a temporary bridge. Do you really have that little faith in government to purchase a temporary bridge and have it not be permanent? By the way, what precedent do we have to suggest that it would be permanent? The only precedent we have to suggest that it would be permanent is because you guys keep interfering with this process. Because you guys are forcing this process to take infinite time and infinite money to complete. I have nothing to suggest in terms of your existing behavior. I have nothing to suggest you guys aren't going to just continue to do this. That you guys aren't just going to be, well, a Mayor Bass is the mayor, R next to his name, so we're going to be nonstop opposition. We're going to be in nonstop adversary mode, right? Which is what this, to me, it sounds like. It sounds to me like the opposition to this point, the goalposts have moved so many times now. The goalposts are now moving to this to concern over the temporary bridge not being temporary. Like, where are you pulling this from? Where are you pulling this from? What precedent do you have to suggest that that would be the case? I have a precedent, and it's coming from you. It's coming from your interference, exactly this process. And I would love to continue to be charitable. I would love to apply Hamlin's razor, but I don't know that I can at this point. I'm struggling to do this. I'm struggling to elicit the principle of charity in this case, where, again, we know what the party politics are in this town. Everybody knows everybody. This isn't some giant city. There's less than 28,000 people in this town. I can't describe this whole thing as anything other than the failure to adhere to the principle of charity on purpose, because this is preposterously uncharitable as a take. But, in addition to being the party of refusal to engage in the principle of charity, well, it is also the party of gaslight at this point.
And they don't believe that there are trucks coming on that road. And they're still coming.
Who doesn't believe that there are trucks coming down this road? I know, and you guys are going to see in the next clip, I know exactly who she's talking about. She's talking about me. She's talking about me saying, you said the goalpost was that there were 18-wheelers regularly going down that road. And my response was, also, me, 5'6" Mike Sennello that everybody knows and who's kind of chubby and out of shape at this point. Yeah, you know what? I played in the NBA once. I was in a game, and in a real NBA game, I dunked. What would be your response to that? Right? Like, it's a dubious claim. And it's not that I don't believe that it's not there. My statement, which I made almost verbatim, was extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So evidence your claim. All I'm saying is show me the 18-wheelers. You all have phones. You all have phones. It's 2022. Take your phones out and film the trucks going by. I can go to Route 7 right now. Stand outside, any part of Route 7. I could go to West End Power right now, stand in the parking lot with my phone and go, 18-wheeler. 18-wheeler going the other way. 18-wheeler. That's what I'm looking for. Show me the evidence. I will be completely believe you. I'm giving you the conditions. I'm giving you the win. All you have to do is show me the evidence. Show me the video of those 18-wheelers regularly going down that road. Show me the 18-wheelers, right? You know this isn't the claim that I'm making. You know this isn't the claim that I'm making. And we know that because, well...
But I wanted to find out what these bridges were capable of supporting, because we've talked a lot about the trucks and the traffic that comes down Cherniske Road. And there's been people on Facebook chattering about how this is a boondoggle and all those Cherniske Road people are causing this problem.
Really? Who's been doing that? Who's the person that's been going on Facebook and saying this project's become a boondoggle? Who is that? Who are you talking about, Adrian? I've said it before, folks. I'll say it again. Adrian, thanks for watching this show. I'm grateful to all of my viewers. So, glad to continue to have you on board. And you know what? I know this is a pre-recorded episode, but the next episode will be live, just like we always are, Sunday night at 7. Come on in. Let's have a conversation. Join in the chat. I'm sure the folks in the chat, Ray Lillis, will love to have you come on and chat with us, right? Love to have you participate in this conversation, like we always do every week, except for this one because it's Easter Sunday and I'm going to be with my family. Deal with it, right? So, thanks, Adrienne, thanks for watching the show. And on that note, let's give Adrienne a little bit more time, because since I told you this was a gold mine, let's keep digging for gold.
So I did a little research, and I found that bridge, the temporary bridge from Acro, was implicated in an accident where the bridge collapsed in California. Granted, it was 1999. The Los Angeles Times wrote about it. You can look it up. The reason it collapsed was because heavy trucks over the weight limit. The weight limit is 40 tons, which is 80,000 pounds. And for those trucks to go over that kind of a temporary bridge, they have to go 5 miles an hour. 5 miles an hour. So I'm going to tell you right now, once the Cherniske Road Bridge was partially closed and the metal plate was put on it, and then Public Works put the stop signs to keep people from going too fast, nobody was stopping at the stop signs, including the large trucks.
So are they going to stop now? Are they going to stop now? So if we instead of having a 2-lane bridge and we have a 1-lane bridge where they didn't stop when there were stop signs, having 1-lane bridge with the stop sign where they weren't stopping is going to make them stop? Like, do you hear yourself when you speak? Like, when I say self-reflection and introspection, this is a great moment here where you can go back and watch yourself on camera and listen to yourself speak. Are you sure that's what you want to stand by? Right? And also, yes, when you abuse a bridge and violate the law, you destroy the bridge. That's going to be true of literally every bridge design ever made in human history. Ever. We talked about this on this show. If that's what your concern is, again, this is an enforcement issue, not an engineering issue. This is not a policy issue. This is not an architectural design issue. This is an enforcement issue. We talked about what happens when a truck goes over a bridge and they're overweight. Their life is over. That truck driver's life is over, right? And whoever's employing them is gone. That business is Kmart. That business is Kmart gone. They cease to exist. Right? This is websites of 1999. Gone. Just gone. Right? That truck driver's life is over. You park one cop car over there, and if the 18-wheelers are going along that road regularly, it should be as easy as just a few hours of one cop car being over there and pulling over every truck. Because we talked about it, the bridge is weight rated to 33 tons for an 18-wheeler. Which is an empty 18-wheeler. And there's no possible way, if you know anything about trucking and infrastructure when it comes to this sort of thing, there's no possible way that an 18-wheeler is going to go down that road with an empty cargo. There's no possible way that's the case. And let's remind you folks too, that weight rating isn't just a blanket weight rating, right? There's a 2-axle weight rating, there's a 3-axle weight rating, there's the multi-axle weight rating, there's the tandem weight rating. That weight rating isn't just a blanket weight rating. It's a weight rating for 18-wheelers, which again is an empty 18-wheeler. So if you're talking now about a UPS truck or a food delivery truck, or one of these flatbeds that you might get from Rings End or whatever delivering lumber, which is entirely possible because there are homes there and people build up there, and sometimes people need lumber and have to get it delivered. This happens, right? Then they don't meet that 33 ton maximum. Their maximum's a lot lower than that. Their weight rating's a lot lower than that. And I would suspect that 40 ton weight limit for these temporary bridges is just like that, not a blanket weight rating. But it doesn't end there, folks, because I just told you who will enforce the law. The people who enforce the law regularly, the police. Go ahead, Adrienne.
And when I would stop, I would have a large truck behind me beeping to make me go over the bridge. So who's going to police this bridge to keep those trucks from going more than 5 miles an hour? I mean, that's a safety issue. And the reason that the bridge in California collapsed was it was multiple trucks exceeding the 40 tons, and one truck happened to go over. He didn't know how much his truck weighed. He went over, and the truck after him went through the bridge.
The police will police. Jesus! Mayor Bass, I really hope you see this. Because seriously, once this bridge gets built, if there really are 18-wheelers up there, you send one cop car. You call Chief Ceruto and you say, Chief, apparently there's a whole bunch of 18-wheelers going up that road. Send a cop car up there and pull over every 18-wheeler that goes across that bridge. Because there's no way that an 18-wheeler is going to be empty if it's going down that road. Just pull them all over. You're allowed to do that anyway. They're the police. They can pull over a commercial vehicle for any reason and say, surprise inspection. Done. Right? Like, show us your paperwork. And the paperwork's going to have the weight rating right on it. It's going to have the weight of the load right on it. And there's no possible way it's going to fit into that weight rating. It's just not going to happen. If we're not going to be deliberately obtuse in the matter, it's just not going to happen. So I asked for evidence. Folks, this is the closest we're going to get to it. And yes, the audio is terrible because this is what happens when you step away from the microphone. This is what happens when you're in front of a podium and you move away from the podium. This is the audio that the dozens and dozens of people who watch this live as it happens can't hear, and there's really nothing for me to do about it. If you're going to just walk away from a microphone, what am I supposed to do about that? But hey, this is the closest we're going to get. I may have to just kind of chime in every once in a while to let people know what she's saying.
And just to give you an idea, I brought some pictures because these trucks have been coming up here. So if you don't mind, Ms. Sorry. That shows you what an 80,000 pound truck is.
Okay, pause. She said that shows you what an 80,000 pound truck is. So a 40-ton truck. She's not showing the truck going across the road. It's an example of a truck, and we don't get to see it.
And I will hold it up. So this is on my road, on Cherniske Road, just on April 1st. That is the truck that's circled. This is a 40-ton refrigerated truck from a company.
So this is a 40-ton refrigerated truck on Cherniske Road. She explained the type of truck just a second ago.
A company called Ginsbergs.com, which is in Hudson, New York. It's an
Ginsbergs.com. It's a company in Hudson, New York.
hour and a half from here. So obviously, they're
Hour and a half
using
from here.
mapping maps to,
They're using Mappy Maps, whoever that is.
get shortcuts. And they may not
To get
even
shortcuts.
be aware that they're taking these roads. It comes up on your Apple or your Android and it says, save 10 minutes. And here's another one. This is a company based out of West Haven. So those trucks are coming and they're big. That's an 80,000 pound truck.
Hold on. Excuse me, folks. So it's an 80,000 pound truck. The truck that she's talking about, the refrigerated truck she's talking about, that's not an 18-wheeler. That's a triaxle truck. That's a plain old-fashioned single-frame truck. If it's 40 tons, it's already way over the weight rating for even an 18-wheeler. Which means we have an enforcement issue here, not a policy issue, not an engineering issue, not a design spec issue, not an architectural issue. We don't need to build a covered bridge. We just need to send a cop car up there. We don't need speed bumps. You just need to send a cop car up there. And by the way, I have a phone too. And I've been in landscaping for 25 years. If you think that that I haven't driven giant dump trucks with giant trailers behind them, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. I've had to deal with weight ratings before. I had the situation where the directions that were printed out for me when I was working for True Green had me going over this tiny little bridge next to 136 in Easton, I think. It was either Easton or Weston, right? And I had to stop, and I had to turn around in somebody's goddamn driveway because I was way over the weight rating, right? If you think that guys aren't doing that, you're out of your mind. And quite frankly, I've done this before where I pull out my phone. Let me see where my phone is. Yeah, I pull out my phone. Right. And I say, oh, there's my phone. Let's look up directions to this. And I'm in my just the truck I have now, the truck and trailer I have now. And I look up and I'm like, I could go there. But yeah, no thanks. Right. If I was driving some 18-wheeler and I saw that Cherniske Road is the road that was suggested. Right. I'm taking one look at that map and seeing zigzagging through the middle of nowhere, northern New Milford. And I'm saying, what? No, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that route. By the way, from where to where? I know where Hudson, New York is. It's right next to Ghent. It's up in Columbia County. I can do this off the top of my head. I don't even have to pull up Google Maps. Where are they going? Where on earth are they going? If they're going down Cherniske Road. This seems to me, again, not only a dubious claim, but if that's the case, if the destination isn't on Cherniske Road itself, and if it is, you have no complaint. Deal with it. Just deal with it. If the destination is some farmer who has pallets and pallets and pallets of something that farmer is shipping out, and they need an 18-wheeler to go pick up those pallets and pallets and pallets of whatever they're shipping out, deal with it. Deal with it. You know? If it's a farmer who needs pallets and pallets and pallets and pallets of something, which farmers do all the time, and they're going to that farm, deal with it. But if that's not the destination, I would love to know what the heck the destination even is. I would love to know who the driver is that's seeing that on their maps and saying, yeah, sure, whatever. I would love to have some evidence for this claim beyond just, here is an example of remember how I talked about the goalpost moving? I said 18-wheelers is what the claim was before. 18-wheelers regularly traveling down that road. Now we're talking about large trucks that are already way over the weight limit, which again is an enforcement issue, not a design issue. It's an enforcement issue. If they were 50 tons and the temporary bridge is weighted for 40 tons, then you pull them over anyways. This isn't going to reduce traffic to have that temporary bridge there in terms of the 18-wheelers going across that bridge. It's just not. It's obviously not. It's self-evidently not. But that's where we are, folks. That's why this whole process is being held up and is going to wind up costing us as much as it is. It's because of this. It's because of this. And unfortunately, that's where we are. So again, I'll bring up the petition again. Let me know if links in this video's description. Let me know if you want me to swing by your house. I'll be happy to get your signature on this matter. Because there are people in the room that are going to say squeakiest wheel gets the grease. And there are people in the room, the 6 Republicans in the room, who are totally on board with everything that I've said. Who are totally on board with this is a Jack Healy. We're going to trust him as DPW director to do the thing. They're totally on board with it. But what I don't have, and we don't have evidence of, is them having the guts to say, you know what? Enough is enough. This is not your money. The 5 or 6 people in this room that are costing you, the taxpayer, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars more than what this should wind up costing, we're done. There's no way that these 5 or 6 people are representative of population level decisions. However, the thousands and thousands of people that voted for you 6 Republicans absolutely are. And this is my way of saying in public, on the record, you have our continued support. You have our trust. You have our faith. That's why we elected you. Again, the score was 73-27. 73-27. Every one of the 6 Republican councilmen had over 4,000 votes in November of 2021. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Not one Democrat got 3,000 votes. That isn't just a win. That's a landslide. That's a statement victory in a town with more registered Democrats than Republicans. So, Republicans, I'm hoping you understand your place. I'm hoping you have a moment to introspect and reflect and say, you know what? This is enough is enough. Enough is absolutely enough. The town has our faith. They voted. The election results showed that they have our faith. We know our position. We're going to instruct Jack Healy to design a 2-lane bridge with a box culvert if we can to save some money and to get the ball rolling now. Now, not tomorrow, not later this afternoon. Now. And that's all there is to say about that. But after public comment, the meeting continued. And this lesson of introspection, this lesson of enough is enough, this lesson of knowing your place just exploded. As we spent over 11 minutes of the town council meeting discussing the minutes. I'm sorry, but I've talked to a lot of people about this whole conversation, and I wish, for those of you who are in the meeting, I wish you guys could see the chat that's happening on Facebook. The town is sick of this. The town is absolutely sick of this. Remember what I said about the party of not obstruction, but the adversarial approach to everything. The mayor is a Republican, therefore we're going to be adversaries to everything, including the damned minutes. Joe Fiala, by the way, explains exactly where the rules of the meetings come from and what the whole point of the minutes are. And hopefully we can put this all to bed with this. We won't be able to, but folks, enjoy. I show my receipts. Here are the receipts. Here's Joe Fiala explaining exactly the purpose of the minutes as it relates to Robert's rules.
There has been some confusion or lack of understanding of what controls how we act as an assembly and a body. Those are Robert's Rules of Order. There's been an awful lot of talk about how we keep our minutes here, and I was taken back by what Robert's Rules sets. In an ordinary society, the minutes should contain mainly a record of what was done at the meeting and not what was said by the members. A formal motion to approve the minutes is not necessary. And if a member objects to the minutes, they should submit a proposed correction to be voted on at the next meeting, so that we don't go on forever about what's in our minutes. They're not a verbatim of what we do.
So do we get this now? It's not a verbatim. It's just supposed to generally reflect what happened. And it's really unimportant that the minutes in any way accurately reflect what was said. And he goes over exactly how you make these amendments to the minutes. And for folks who have been keeping score long enough, Lisa Heda used to do this all the time. Lisa Heda used to be the one to raise her hand during approval of the minutes and say, I would like to make the following corrections. She'd read them off by line. She'd make read off a verbatim correction that she wants. And she would say something along the lines of, I move to amend the minutes to say the following. And then she would take her printed copy, let me find a piece of paper. Forget it. Take her printed copy, hand it over to Stephanie Barksdale, the recording secretary, and submit it for the minutes, and then we'd vote. That's it. The entire conversation would take about 30 seconds. Lisa Heda, Democrat, understood how this process worked. So this isn't me saying Republican good, Democrat bad. This is me saying, know your place. Know where you are. Understand that this is a formal meeting setting. And that the purpose of these meetings is to conduct the business of town council, is to conduct the body's business. That's it. That's it. And when you're in these positions, like I would be if I was a libertarian in certain places where I know going into it, I'm going to get voted down 8-1. At most, I say, this is my position. I'm explaining the way I'm going to vote. I know I'm going to lose 8-1. Now let's vote. Right? That's the most I would say. That's the most I would say, because I know that I'm not in that position. I know that I'm not going to be winning people over in the moment. I know that I'm not going to be swaying those votes. And this is especially true on the minutes, for God's sake. Quite frankly, this is not a multi-million-dollar project that we're deciding on that we could potentially save millions of dollars on. It's the minutes. It's the minute. It's the least important part of the agenda. This is why, and he was right to do this. This is why Dr. Mullen, this is why Doc Pete Mullen proposed the idea. Again, Democrat good in this situation. This was a great idea by Dr. Mullen to propose to include as part of the agenda a consent agenda, a list of things that we all know are just, there's going to be no discussion and everyone's just going to vote 9-0 in favor. The minutes, right? The dedication of a flag in the name of something, right? These are what we call proverbial flag bills. So Democrat good in the moment. Doc Pete Mullen was right to do that. That's why it's in the consent agenda, because it's something that there shouldn't be this type of conversation and debate on. And, well, here's where this thing went off the rails. The minutes were part of the consent agenda, and
I'd like to move to accept items 3A and B of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Just a clerical error, which I spoke with Stephanie about on minutes.
Oh my God.
I'm going to bring that up tonight.
oh my God, it starts. A clerical error. Is that really that important? Well, then, if it is, you do what Lisa Heda did. And you say, I've proposed amendments. Here are the amendments I've proposed. Vote yay or nay. And we move on. But we didn't. We couldn't possibly do that, could we? We couldn't possibly do that because there was yet another, and the name that's been given to them, and I won't say by who, is the Dem Dames. There was yet another dame in the room. Therefore, there's an item on the agenda. Therefore, not only do we have to get our 2 cents in, we have to be the party of adversary. Everything that obviously is going to be voting one way, we have to be the ones to vote against it, even when it's the minutes. I might be poisoning the well, but I don't care at this point. Hillary, explain your objections.
We have a motion on the floor with an amendment.
Are we having a discussion about the minutes before we vote yes or no on the?
Is there anything else that you'd like to
Yes,
discuss?
I am not going to be approving these minutes, because they formalized, something that was said in the last meeting that's a total contradiction with what was said in a prior meeting. So, it's about the bonded money for the Cherniske Bridge. In the Feb 28th meeting, it was discussed that the money was set aside. It was $1 million, $300,000 for Tamarack Bridge and $600,000 for Cherniske. In the minutes that are, would be formalized in these minutes, we said
Formalized?
no, that it was stated that that does not exist. It has been switched to Gaylord Bridge. So there was no clarification on that. There was no discussion. So I'm just sort of, yeah, so that's that one. And then the second one was, I think it's already been stated by the members of the public, but Attorney DeBella described the function of the Scenic Road Advisory by saying it was, aesthetic function, which is just factually not correct. So I'm not going to approve the minutes just on those things. And lastly, I think that I just would like to voice a complaint about the process, because the process that was followed for approving the temporary bridge, it was not on the agenda. You had the letters from the police department and the fire department. Those were not shared with us before. So we had to take a vote on something that we'd never seen or heard of and didn't know was coming. So I feel like that process was not what it should be if we're following protocol. So thank you.
It's every meeting so far, folks. Every meeting has been like this. Every single one. The minutes do not enact into law anything. The minutes do not make anything true. The minutes do not formalize a motion made by town council. They don't. We don't even need to be voting on the minutes. The minutes don't even have to accurately reflect the meeting. The meeting has to take place, and the business of the meeting is what matters. What you guys vote on is what you guys vote on. And if one element of the historical record isn't perfectly accurate, then you make amendments to it or you vote against its approval. That's it. That's it. And if you don't like the result of a meeting, how is that in any way related to the minutes? This is such a frustrating position to be in, to constantly be in a position where I'm listening to, well, it did take place, which is all the minutes are there to do, but I didn't like what took place, therefore I'm going to vote against the minutes, and so should you. That's just bonkers take. Again, I'm not going to say you guys should shut up and just get out of the way, but again, you guys lost 73-27. 73-27. And this is the damned minutes. You think this is going to help that score? Honestly? Do you really think this is what the members of the electorate are looking for? Do you really think these petty contrivances that you're bringing up non-stop with things like the minutes, do you really think that's doing credit to your position? Is that really you being in your place? Right? Like, again, I'm not telling you have to go sit in your corner and be quiet because you lost by a mile. But I think you guys should at the very least have said in November, holy crap, we got killed. Holy crap, we lost. We got clobbered. In a town with more Democrats than Republicans. Maybe we should look back and say, why are we constantly getting clobbered in November? A town that voted for Johanna Hayes in 2018. A town that voted for Johanna Hayes in 2020. A town that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And yet is 2-1 for the town council seats and 3-1 for the mayor's seat the other way. Here's the perfect opportunity for you to have that moment of introspection. But instead, we didn't do that. We spent 11 more minutes on the minutes, for crying out loud, until Mother Katie Francis finally came in to chide the children in the room. And that's I'm characterizing it that way because you guys are going to see even Katie Francis has a limit.
But what we just said Alex, is that if the process occurs, and it is all those things you just said that you don't want to happen, but if that's what happens, that's what goes, that's the tenor of the meeting.
Damn
And I'm going
straight.
to ask you, you say you didn't have any information, so you could do some research. I mean, you wanted to counter what the director of the Department of Public Works or whoever else, I was not at that meeting. But I guess what I have to say is it's nice to get information, to read it and look at it, but frankly, none of us at this table are qualified to sit and say something of any real importance about whether or not a temporary bridge or what type of bridge it is. You know, this town has been here for a long time, and we've relied on the people who handle things such as our infrastructure and our students and our government. And I don't see any reason to start second-guessing people about whether or not 5 trucks or 4 trucks go over it. That bridge has been there forever, whatever bridge we're talking about. For whatever reason, people on this committee have started to think, this council, that we're experts on bridges. I'm a mechanical engineer. I would never say anything about a bridge. Andrew's talked about roads. He's not purporting to be an expert on it. He's getting the research and talking about it. If you want
Thank
to do
you.
the research and come and put up an argument about something that somebody that's a qualified person, then say that, and then we expect you to come back and do it. But sometimes there just isn't time for that. And I have to say, we have wasted so much time talking about some things at this council. In my years here, I don't think I've ever seen it happen this way. Not to say it's unimportant, but I will say time suckage with a capital T. It's just really not all that important. Pay attention when we're at the meeting. Talk about it here. Don't waste time going back and forth about this and that. Clerical errors, yes, we don't want somebody to look something up someday and see the wrong date. But to go on about what you think was said, it's just not the important part of what we're doing. I think we're losing sight of that.
Can we call the question?
And you're gonna talk to each other rather than listen to me? Fine, call the freaking question, yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of it.
Me too. Well done, Katie. And when I said, okay, it sounds like she's chiding her children, am I wrong, folks? Am I wrong, folks? And again, this wasn't an appeal to authority that she's making. She's making the case that I said in the beginning, which is know your place. As the councilman, is it really your place to interfere with the pedantic minutia of what takes place in DPW and to just nonstop, every time a project comes along, Katie Francis is going to jump in and be like, and what ratio of admixture are you adding to, of aggregate are you adding to that concrete? What's the temperature of that concrete you're pouring? What are you making that form out of? Like, either the legislative body trusts the people that are in charge of these positions to whom we trust, right? Either we trust Jack Healy to make these engineering decisions. Either we trust Mike Boucher to oversee what he oversees when it comes to the day-to-day operations over at DPW, or we don't. That's the case she's making. She's not saying that whatever Jack Healy says is true because he's an engineer. What she's saying is we either have faith in his decision-making as a legislative body. That's our role, or we don't. The role of the legislative body is to, in this case, effectively say, we trust you, Jack, do your job, or we don't trust you, therefore don't do your job, in which case, goodbye. Goodbye, you're fired. And that's exactly what they should do. If they don't trust Spencer Cerruto to be the chief of police anymore and entrust with the chief of police the things that you're supposed to entrust with that job, instead of micromanaging every tiny little aspect that takes place, and this is coming from a libertarian who believes in consent of the governed, right? The whole point of hiring these positions out and not being that position yourself is because there's a certain specific expertise that volunteers in the room just don't have the time and capability to do themselves. Otherwise, they would be in those roles. Otherwise, Hillary Ram, Adriana Riccio would be the DPW director. And if Adriana Riccio, if you want to apply to be the DPW director, I challenge you at the next town council meeting to say so. Go ahead. Show us your resume. Love to hear it. I challenge you to say we should no longer trust DPW Director Jack Healy and that he should be terminated. I challenge you to say that. Go ahead. Go ahead. See how well that's going to work. See how that's going to reflect again in 2023, in November of 2023. And I keep pointing to that scoreboard because you guys keep allowing it to take place. Because that scoreboard is the near population level sample size. That is a reflection of what the governed are consenting to. And, You know, all this again for the damn minutes. This is how the vote went when the minutes finally got decided on. When Mike Nahom finally had the guts to say, "I call the question." Here it goes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No, I'm a
Any
vote.
abstentions?
Okay.
Of course, that's how it all went. And are we going to see introspection? Are we going to see self-reflection? It's Easter Sunday. There couldn't possibly be a better day for that. We'll have to see. The next town council meeting will be tomorrow night. This is a special meeting, so we're not going to be deciding on that. But the regular one's going to be on August 25th. And we'll have one more episode of the Mike Sennello Show. Sorry, April 25th. We'll have one more episode of the Mike Sennello Show on the 24th at 7 p.m. as we always do next Sunday. And again, thanks so much to everyone who watches, no matter what the letter is next to your name. I'm genuinely grateful for the audience, especially today when we're just not going to be able to do a live Q&A. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next week. Good night.